Good morning and welcome to the trade setup right here on BloombergQuint Live. I'm Neeraj Shah and let me just get my, yep, okay, I have the trade setup for the day. So, I must say, if you just look at the surprises that are happening around us, Alibaba Singles Day sales were a big one, right? 540 billion yuan, as I read, which eclipsed the 498 billion yuan official tally for 2020. So, well, that's where the money seems to be at. So, pretty good, pretty strong show there, and it was showing in the way the Alibaba stock, I think, listed in the U.S. markets performed as well. But anyways, that's not the story. The story continues to be inflation. First, the U.S. markets, and there was a bit of a pullback in the U.S. markets yesterday. So Nasdaq in particular did really well. The Dow and S&P okay, but the Nasdaq in particular did really well for itself, and relatively speaking, I'm saying. And I think the US indices are fighting hard to avoid the losses for the week. So that's point one. But like I said, I think the big story continues to be inflation in India and across the world. By the way, yesterday's Pidilite's comments were a telling sign of what's happening to large corporations in India as well when it comes to raw material pressures. But this is the question, viewers. If as and if the US inflation spirals, will there be surprise on the rate front? We've been talking about a taper tantrum. Maybe that is not the case. Could there be a rate tantrum ahead? I think that's the key point that everybody will be asking. I have no answers to it. I don't think too many people do. Today's global views include a view from Ray Dalio speaking about how there could be a wealth destruction. But really, if you want to hear a really smart market conversation, there are two that I would suggest, at least on our platform. I'm sure other platforms also have good stuff. But I think one, Ira's conversation with Neelkan Mishra yesterday was quite stunning, really. You might want to read that or hear that whole piece. It'll be there on our website, of course. So you might want to hear that. And you might want to hear Samit Vartak's view on portfolio construct. He's not dwelled so much on inflation and what it does. That is Neelkan's domain. Samit has worked more on portfolio strategy. So I think both those conversations really stood out. Anyways, back to the markets. So the Nasdaq, a bit of a green. Asia, I reckon, could have that too, and the SGX Nifty will probably indicate a similar stance. Wherein after we closed down only 0.7%, so really nothing too dramatic, but maybe a bit of a pullback out there anticipated. The MOV function will tell you what we did in trade yesterday, by the way, and again, uh, pretty shabby market breadth, save for select pockets individually which did well. Pretty shabby market breadth. Remember yesterday we spoke speaking about this whole capex related themes of Thermax, Timken, etc., and that whole pocket did really well for itself. So select mid caps are starting to do okay. But broadly, yesterday too was a day of a bit of a dull market breadth. 2 days on a trot now. We've had pretty shabby broader market performance too. So I think that the worry is that, right, for the index as well, the Nifty comfortably breaking the intraday support of 17,900 is broadly negative. But I just think that maybe this overnight Nasdaq bounce may help. But somehow, as much as I read and hear all the experts that we speak to or hear, I think increasingly get a sense that could there be a case of the Nifty completely flatlining? I think that's the question. And very difficult to see the index making a rampant up move. I know there were talks of, oh, post 18,000 will we go to 19,000? Somehow in the current environment, it seems a bit difficult that the Nifty will make such a large move. Maybe it could be stock specific and broader market specific. For the Nifty seems difficult. And yes, select sectors are starting to show some catch up post the mid cap rout. So we're starting to see, like we saw yesterday in the capex plays, like we might see in metals today. I think it promises to be a Metallica day today. So could we see a bit of a bounce from metals? Could we see a bit of a bounce from select healthcare names? I think that's the question that maybe some of the results will pose to the markets at large. Very heavy results day, but I'm not getting into that because there's a bunch of other names that we need to focus on, which are stocks which we should focus on. So first, the MSCI rejig that has happened, and broadly the more important additions and deletions are these, right? So on expected lines, the likes of IRCTC, Mindtree, Tata Power, and Zomato make it to the list. Godrej Properties makes it to the list as well, as does BEL. So these are broadly in line, and therefore no surprises out here. Some buying expected, whether it happens now or in the next few days, anybody's guess. So I doubt that these just tradable information, but it's an information to keep in mind nevertheless. And on the deletion front, IPCA and REC, again, broadly anticipated by a bunch of alternative research teams, including the one at Edelweiss. So no surprises whatsoever, but important names to keep an eye out for. I think Tata Steel was okay. You would say mixed bag maybe, but the overall numbers, just the weight of the overall numbers is pretty stunning. But with Tata Steel at a market cap of 1.5 lakh crores and profits at about 12,000 odd crores, I think there's some merit there in trying to think that the absolute numbers, whether we are in an up cycle or a down cycle, is difficult, but the absolute numbers are strong. However, you have to keep in mind that the prices move on sentiment and not necessarily only on performance. However, this is the CLSA view on Tata Steel. They have a buy with a target price of 1950. They're saying that Q2 EBITDA came slightly below expectations on lower standalone profitability. But remember, Europe is doing very well, and if Europe's exports to US start, then Tata Steel Europe could benefit quite significantly. The net debt fell about 1,500 odd crores QOQ. FCF got impacted by working capital increase and higher cash tax, but the net debt falling is a positive. The management of Tata Steel has said that they expect the Asian steel prices to remain range bound, the Indian steel prices to rise, and European prices to remain resilient. And I have no questions on the European prices for the time being, simply because of the point that I made, that because the US has started this import of European steel, maybe it aids Tata Steel Europe's performance too. But I pay very high regard to people who have looked at these steel cycles for way longer than I have, including, like I said, Neelkan Mishra. And in the same conversation with Ida that I'm talking about, he's made some points on how he expects the commodity piece to move ahead. I think it's worth a listen, and therefore worth questioning the thesis that you may have on steel. The numbers, like I said, are rock solid. Management after management is coming and saying that we are in a super cycle. Maybe we are, but there are enough and more experts on the other side who are saying, let's just hold on to our horses. So I don't know which way it will unravel. For today, though, it seems to be a very strong day for metals. I think we'll see most of the companies bouncing back. Alcoa did really well. I think some of the other metal stocks listed abroad did really well. So we might well have a strong day for metals. One more company contributing to that. Can we actually take NMDC first, or if we can, because we just stick with the metals piece, or maybe go with Astral? So let's stick to the results the way we had decided we will. So pull up Astral, and then I'll revisit NMDC. Astral Q2 performance pretty solid, I thought. Revenues were up 54% at 1154 crores. Margins at 18.3% versus 19.2%, and net profit up 63%. The beauty about Astral is that it is as large a pipes company, for example, as maybe, I'm not talking in absolute size, but in relative size compared to the industry. Astral is probably as large in the pipe side as maybe an Asian would be in paints, or Tata Steel would be in steel, so on and so forth. Market leader, and it's a pleasant surprise to see a large market leading company not losing out too much on the EBITDA front. Without bothering about what the estimates were, viewers, and I don't know about what the individual brokerage notes will say, but I think this is a commendable performance, especially since for the last 2 quarters, the CFO has been highlighting that there are some pressures. I think this is a commendable performance. Wouldn't be surprised if the stock does okay. You want to hear the management today, by the way. I think they'll join us at 10 a.m. if I'm not wrong, Astral Poly, so you might want to watch out for that. Like I said, metals and MDC, I thought the numbers weren't all that bad. I mean, revenues up quite significantly, margin profile largely maintained, and as a result of which the net profit shot up compared to the earlier ones. So 772 crores versus 2338 crores. So broadly, the NMDC numbers, I would say largely in line. In fact, I think the one thing that people wanted to just know that they paid, I think, some 2,400 crores towards incremental premium in Q2, which is about 2,660 per ton, and which people needed some clarity. But that aside, I thought the numbers were largely in line. And again, good numbers, largely in line, but good numbers. And since it seems to be a day when metals could do well, maybe this one could do well too. So let's wait and watch. Sequential realizations were so much better than expectation. You might well see a bit of a reaction. Some other stocks in focus. So many of you have told me that the stocks in focus thing works very well. So just trying to do that. Okay, I think we missed some, but I'll still mention. So Aster DM, margins expanded 160 basis points, PAT up 3x at 127 crores. JBM Auto, revenues and PAT ahead of estimates, margins were steady. I think the numbers that we haven't missed, but we have got this new play. Okay, I stand corrected. Healthcare Global, Q2 EBITDA at 61 crores versus 30 crores. So watch our viewers, both Aster DM and Healthcare Global, pretty solid numbers. Let's wait and watch how they react. PNB Gills, the numbers were rock solid, really. PAT up 2x quarter on quarter and 5x YOY. I couldn't calculate the NI in the limited time that I had, but the PAT numbers look solid. I think the NI too was, from whatever little I made, back of the envelope numbers suggested, a calculation suggested, seemed okay. Watch out for PNB Gills. Mayur Unicoaters, highest ever quarterly sales for the company, PAT up about 48%, pretty strong show. And Somani Ceramics, very strong volume growth, PAT up about 71% YOY. Again, a good set of numbers. So largely at the broader end of the spectrum, you might well have some of these stocks doing well, especially PNB Gills, by the way, but some of the others too doing well. So do watch out for them. A transaction on APL, Apollo Tubes, I reckon DSP Mutual Fund, very small, but DSP buying a mid-cap name always raises a thing or two. We need somebody's a very noted manager. They bought about 14 or lakh shares of APL Apollo Tubes at 900. The promoters sold some of them. I presume the placement was done via the promoter selling that stake at about 900 per share. Watch out for APL Apollo Tubes and watch out for Godrej Consumer. I know there are other brokerages which have maintained the target prices, but I think Morgan Stanley on Godrej Consumer have maintained an underweight. Okay, let's stick with Credit Suisse. The spelling, ignore the spelling, viewers, but just look at what they're saying. So Credit Suisse on Godrej Consumer outperformed, but the target price has been cut to 1100 from 1150. And Morgan Stanley on Godrej Consumer, GCPL again, underweight. The target price is 829. Of course, they are saying that the Q2 numbers marginally missed the estimates and consensus, but inflationary pressures will keep on weighing on the near-term margins. Viewers, almost every FMCG company is speaking about inflationary pressures, and you got to ask yourself how much of this can be passed on and how much of it can't be. That might give you an idea of how you want to position yourself in FMCG in particular. But today seems to be metals day, seems to be in some fashion some healthcare and pharma stocks, and those could be interesting, especially the two with results. Let's wait and watch how they react. But otherwise, difficult to see the Nifty make a very large move. Maybe some individual sectors could do the trick. And if you want to speak to one company which I think posted almost the results of the day, so to say, that's of course Astral Poly. You might want to tune in at about 10 a.m. for that conversation on BloombergQuint. Thanks so much, viewers, for being with us today. Have a safe, profitable day ahead. And if you're stepping out, please stay masked up.